Hey guys, it's Amadou here back with another video. We're at number 7 now, so I'm kind of like surprised, right? Because every other time I try to start this shit, I will always stop at like number 1 or number 2, but we're number 7 now, so that's pretty cool. And I'm hoping, I just think that like what's helping me stay consistent is just like the idea that I'm not really, I don't have one topic. I'm just documenting what I'm doing day in and day out, and that's just about it. For example, just talking about how today went, is currently 8:57 p.m. here in Barca. Today I just went to my 9 to 5, man. That's all I really did. I woke up at like 6:40, 6:40, 6:40, 6:50. First thing I did, I went to the bathroom, got ready, put on my gym clothes, and I went and I run straight from my house to the gym. Hit a very quick 30-minute gym workout. I just hit some lateral raises, some bicep curls. I mean, you can kind of see, say mashallah right now. Yeah, you see this shit. Anyway, that's what's up. Anyways, I just kind of hit some lateral raisers, some bicep curls, a bit of chest, right? Incline chest, bench press with the dumbbells, and I hit some shrugs. And that was literally 30-minute workout. I'm trying to experiment with this. Not so much for today because I could have gone to the gym in the evening, but rather for like my more busy days where I'm maybe working 10, 12 hours a day. And so for those days, I don't really have time outside of the morning to go to the gym or something like this. And so just so I have I know I can hit that, right? I know I can have 30 minutes workout, still keep making progress in the gym, not sacrifice that, which is what I had been doing for the last couple weeks. And but still, that not taking too much time out of my day. So yeah, this was a pretty cool experiment I made. Went from to the gym with just my phone and my house keys, which is not probably the best for optimizing for gym workout, but I honestly don't care. So I just did that, went to the gym, came back, had my shower, meditated for 10 minutes, got ready for work, packed, and went to work. At work, I just did regular stuff, Boss wasn't in the office, so we kind of fucked around a lot. Didn't really get much work done, to be honest. Still baffles me to this day how little work like people do in like office jobs. Right? Maybe I'm biased because my job, maybe in the office I'm in, most people are not that productive, but they take hella pauses. Like they take like 3 to 4 pauses throughout the day without even including the lunch break. Lunch breaks is like more than an hour, and in my opinion, it's crazy, right? That's not what I was used to. But then again, it's a different mindset, right? People just go there to like collect the paycheck and stuff, right? They focus more on like keeping a job as opposed to like excelling, because whether they perform really well or they do the bare minimum doesn't really impact their earnings that much, right? So there's that. Yeah, it was a pretty boring day at work, but hey, I still did some stuff. Came back home and I just was chilling, made my dinner and ate a little bit, watched an episode of Snowfall, which I've been watching recently. Snowfall is like this TV series which talks about like this young black guy in America, in LA, in the 80s, building his drug, cocaine business empire, which is pretty interesting. So it's interesting. It's obviously it's a TV series, right? So there's that, but I'd rather watch that than watch anime, so to say. Ideally, I would just like read or watch content, but I'm trying to take it easy on myself, which is kind of like the topic of today's video, which is kind of like what rest means and what being consistent means, right? This is a concept that I'm taking from a book called Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, I think. Yeah, Stephen Covey. If you haven't read that book, please read it. I highly advise you to read it. It's a great book. Basically all the main principles of self-improvement you can find inside the book, right? You don't need to watch any YouTubers like when it comes to self-improvement. They explain things obviously in a certain detail and they give you some some information, but honestly you don't need to watch Hamza, you don't need to watch all the self-improvement videos that you watch. Just read this book, it will give you all the basic info you need to know about self-improvement, and that's basically, and anything you add to that is really just extra shit, right? But anyways, the concept I'm talking about is PPC balance, which stands for production slash production capability balance. Basically, when you look at a system, an organism, a system in general, a system takes inputs, processes them, and it outputs something based on the inputs while being influenced by the environment, right? That's basically how a system works at the first principle level. The ability of a system to produce, right? That's the production of the system, right? The system produces an output. How much output the system produces, that's what the production stands for, right? So if I had to give an example, when you look at the business, the end goal of the business, the production of the business is customers served and profit made, right? That's what business produces, right? Customer serves and profit made. That's what the business production is, right? But then there's production capability, which is the ability of the system to maintain production quality and volume over time. For instance, when one would look at a system like the human body, you can do work. If we define work as effort times resistance, which is a pretty decent way to define work. For example, you go to the gym, that's work, right? You push some weight, that's work. The input that you put in is good sleep, good diet, good environment, and water, and all of these things to prime yourself for physical exertion. And the output, the production of that of your body is maybe a good workout. This is just a very basic example, but just to kind of like drive in the concept, right? That's a good workout. Now your production capability is your body's ability to actually have a good workout, right? So for example, that is impacted by how much sleep you're getting, how well are you taking care of your body, right? Using another example, a car, right? What is the function of what is the production of a car? Movement, right? You give in gasoline, and you give in gasoline and manual inputs, and the output is movement, right? That's basically what a car does. Now, that's the production capability for the car would be, well, how well are you taking care of the engine? Are you making sure there are no mistakes? Are you refilling the oil? Are you changing the oil? Are you refilling the water? Are you making sure the tires are well taken care of? Basically, just ensuring that the system is in peak condition to produce, right? And when we look at humans in general, we could consider our production as that's a very interesting thing. How would I define what a human's production would be? Well, we could define it as work. Yeah, we could define it as work. Let's assume that a human's production is work, right? Your production capability in this scenario would be, well, how well are you taking care of your body and mind? What how much sleep you're getting? How good is your diet? How good is the food that you put in? How good is your mental diet? How good is the content that you're consuming? How good is your self-talk? How good is your state management? All of this stuff that ensure that you're in peak condition, right? And basically the whole concept is that you always want to keep a balance between production and production capability. What this means is that when you look at any system, if you try to optimize for production, what's going to happen, if you try to optimize for maximum production, at least what's going to happen is that your production capability is going to go down, right? It's going to go down. If you instead focus too much on production capability and just optimize always for peak performance only to maximize peak performance, you're not going to produce as much, because it's just like the concept of like a sprinter, right? If you want a sprinter to sprint the fastest, he's not gonna sprint much at all, is he now? He's gonna sprint maybe once a week. That's gonna be like extra effort, and then maybe he's gonna rest for like a week or two, right? And it's the same concept, right? If you optimize for production, you sacrifice production capability. If you optimize for production capability, you sacrifice production. The goal here is you want to keep balance between the two, right? You want to keep them balanced. Why? Because if you maximize production, sacrificing production capability, in the case of a human being, you're going to work. You're going to work 12, 14, 16-hour days for weeks, and then you're going to burn out because you haven't taken care of your body and mind, and your body and mind will be forced into either shutting down to recover, and forced to just like recover and get back to a base minimum level of sustainability, or it's just going to break down, right? Which is what happens, for example, with a car. If you have a car and you just push it and you always floor the accelerator and you always push the car super hard and you never take care of it, you never change the tires, you never change the oil, you never check the engine, make sure that it's all running smooth and nice, you don't take care of the car is going to break down, okay? But at the same time, you don't want to be the guy who's bringing the car to the mechanic every day, because that will make no sense, right? You bring the car to the mechanic every day, you're not really driving the car that much now, are you? You're not extracting an optimal value of like production, which is the whole point of having the system in the first place, right? The goal of the system is to produce a good amount consistently for a long time, right? That's what, at least for the car, right? That's the goal, right? So you don't want to focus too much on keeping the car all nice and in peak conditions, because peak conditions, there's only so like, if you have the car in peak conditions now, you drive it for like 5 minutes, it's not in peak conditions anymore. What, are you gonna bring it back to the mechanic? No, because you don't really need absolute peak conditions to produce a good enough amount of results, right? A good enough amount of outputs. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is that when it comes to everything in your life, every system you're a part of, every system you operate, and even relationships, you want to always keep a PPC balance. You always want to keep a production capability balance. What does that mean? That means that you work, but you also rest. You make sure that you're primed for work, but you don't try to optimize it so that you're at peak performance every time. You want to get to a level of like preparation and recovery, to where like when you're performing, you're almost at peak performance, while not having spent too much time into trying to achieve this state, so that you actually can spend valuable time into producing. And you want to run that again the day after that, and the day after that, and the next day, and the day after that, going over, right? And so that's basically the concept, right? How do you implement it in your life? Well, today you work for 12 hours and you go to sleep maybe a little, you go to sleep. When you sleep, you make sure that you're sleeping good. When you wake up, throughout the day, you make sure you're eating the right foods. You make sure you're eating well. You make sure you're sleeping well. You make sure you're taking care of your mental state. You make sure you're exercising, taking care of your physical body, right? Taking care of your mental state. Maybe you meditate. You like meditating, or maybe you like doing something else. I don't know what you like to do. have to figure that out. Basically, you just take care of your body and your mind, right? And that's basically it, man. If you manage to find the balance between how much time you're spending investing in your well-being and how much time you're actually spending working, producing, and you manage to find this balance, you can basically ensure that your system is gonna run efficiently and produce good results for as long as possible. Now, obviously, as with everything, entropy is a thing, so the system cannot run forever. You're gonna die soon. You're gonna, not soon, but you're gonna die sooner or later, right? But that's the best way to go about your life, right? There's a lot of people who who over index on one or the other, right? They either work 80, 90 hours per week and then they end up burning out and they don't know what they're doing and they can't do anything anymore and and they actually end up making during those weeks where they were working 80, 90 hours a week, maybe they make 15, 20 steps forward, but then they burn out and now they can't work for like a month or two and now they made just 25 to 50 steps backwards, and basically they are even worse than they were when they started out. So yeah, that's the concept, man. Always take care of your production capability. Make sure that every system that you're running, example a business, not only you're producing the desired amount of, in this case for a business, profits and customers served, but you're also making sure that you can consistently handle that same volume of production done over a long enough period of time. And the only way you can do that is if you invest, for example, in the case of a business, if you invest in your team, you invest into making SOPs, you optimize the SOPs, you try to slash inefficiencies, you try to make sure that the team is actually motivated, and you try to develop the skills of the team, and you also try to make their life better. You try to align their lives to the company's mission, right? You try to align their personal goals with the company's goals, and so everybody's doing everything in their best interest. But at the same time, you allow them the time that they need to rest, right? That's why nobody works 7 days a week, right? That's why we have like Saturdays and Sundays for some people to rest. If hell, I mean, no, I'm not gonna use that example, right? But yeah, that's basically it. If you like the concept, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about it. Actually, I'm very curious if you have like different ideas, what you think about it. I want to hear you. I want to hear you. And as always, to your success, man. Have a good day.